Greetings and welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Poly Weekly News. I'm your host, David Danto, and it's the David's Club this week. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, David Bryan, who's Poly CTO. David, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
So tell us, for somebody who doesn't know you, who's never heard of you, what do you do at Poly?
Yeah, CTO at, obviously at different places means different things, but in a lot of ways, I think a good summary of what we do at Poly is we're sort of the innovation headlights, if you will, for the company across the portfolio. So we're looking at new technologies that may, be very critical to sort of collaboration in general, communications in general, or more specifically to particular products, particular lines that we're looking at. We spend a lot of time understanding from customers and partners and things as well, market trends and kind of how people are using the products. And then we get to go play. So the thing that's really fun is we take some of that new tech, we take some of those new ideas, and we like to build the prototypes and the next generation products that hopefully will land in the laps of some of our customers in a few years. Right? It's a great role. It's a lot of fun, and we really get a chance to touch all kinds of different things across the company and across the whole industry, really.
So it's like the kids' lab in Iron Man 3. You get all the toys and the potato gun and all the rest of it, and you get to put it all.
It's actually, people joke about that, but you're pretty darn close. We've often been referred to as the Batman group, right? We get to go off and build all the weird, fun toys and play with them. But a lot of it turns into product in the long run too. So I like to think we have a big practical impact as well. But yeah, you're not far off. That's pretty close.
So now that we've insulted DC and Marvel, let's
equal
actually
opportunity, right?
There you go. Yeah. Let's take a step back. Let's talk about you personally. How long have you been with Poly?
So I've been with Poly just about 4 years, although I was with Polycom prior to that a number of years ago, and then left and went off and played professor for a little while. And I've been in the communications industry now for probably longer than I should admit, over 20 years, going back to the early days of SIP and some of that. So yeah, it's been quite a while, but 4 years most recently here at Poly.
That's actually what I was going to ask you. What's a journey to a CTO? What kind of background? Where else have you worked? To give just a little glimpse into how do you get to become the chief technology officer?
Yeah, so I started out, I was actually a physicist in some of my early jobs, but I've always been also in computer science. And it's kind of funny the way I ended up in communications. I got poached, headhunted by a startup back in those early days who said, hey, you're writing control system software for a particle accelerator. If you can make that work, you ought to be able to make a telephone call connect, right? Hey, come build phones with us. And it was great. It was really exciting for me. That was when I went out to Silicon Valley for the first time and, kind of made that transition. So been in the industry, ever since then, worked for a startup that got bought by Cisco way back in the early days. Doing SIP stacks, and then spent a couple of years first as a CTO at one of my own startups, and then as a CEO at one of my own startups. And then after those were acquired, went off and played professor for a couple of years. And then, like I said, came back here. So lots of time in development, lots of time in internet standards for a few years. And then more recently, a lot of things that before coming here probably fell more in kind of a product management kind of role where we were defining new products for the industry at some of my startups. So
yeah, that's not unique in that a lot of the best people that have roles at our companies and other companies are ones that understand what the other roles are. As opposed to just being stuck in your own silo. It's like the baseball analogy, just because, you're a good third baseman, you need to know what the catcher's doing, you need to know what the pitcher's doing, what the outfield is doing. So you do have a little bit of that robust, general sciences and you understand what's going on in the product management process. That's got to help you in what you do in terms of putting technologies together.
Yeah, it does. And in some ways, it's not a joke. It's true. I know very little about a lot of different things. And a lot of it is just sort of helping to coordinate in my role. We have people on the team who really are deep experts in all kinds of areas. And we work closely with other product groups and other engineering groups across the company who have really deep expertise, on everything from camera optics to, headset design or whatever it might be. So a lot of it really is more about kind of helping connect and, back to that headlight analogy, finding the right sort of people, getting them in the right place so that they can share their vision, and kind of get that across the company. So yeah, it is a lot of that kind of cross-functional role. So, which
Yeah,
I love. It's a lot of fun.
and talking about physics, we're talking about a perfect sine wave over the course of my long career. And what was the most important thing to be a generalist or somebody who's specific? It's got the value in the industry kind of goes up and down to really do that. But the generalist sees what's going on. The person who's really dedicated to one piece, can get really buried in that. Who's to say what's better and what's not?
Yeah, you got to have a little bit of both, right? And so no, it's fun to get to be that generalist, but I wouldn't be able to do all the things that we get to do as a group if it weren't for a lot of really great specialists that we have actually doing the real work, right?
Yeah,
So yeah.
the value of teamwork. All right, so give everybody an example if you can. You might have to think about this for a minute or two of a technology that was developed in the CTO's office and fleshed out that has actually made it into some of the Poly products that are working today.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few, which I think it's really fun that we get to do that, and really kind of a good kind of testimony, I guess, to the structure that we do actually get a lot of the things that escape from the bat cave, if you will, and actually do make their way into the product. So a few that I can think about, we have the director AI products that are out there today that are controlling all of the cameras, finding and locating people, being able to frame them, being able to really kind of the goal is, and hence the name, simulate almost what a real director would be able to do in terms of controlling the camera.
Now, 20, 30 years ago, the only way to do that would be if the person in the room was wearing like a fob or an identifier or something that the camera could zone in on. The technology for cameras to understand what was in the image didn't exist back then.
Yeah, I mean, either the way you did it was by hard programming, particular presets and trying to get people to stay in one place, or to your point, you could use trackers or things like that you would have a physical thing to try to make sure that people knew where to do it. But in more recent years, we've moved towards leveraging all of the machine learning and all of these more advanced techniques, and really being able to use that to make these intelligent decisions. And today there's, a lot of work on that and large groups doing it at Poly. But a lot of that early work all came out of kind of the CTO office. To your point, early on that tech wasn't there, right? So we got a chance to start playing with some of that as it was just emerging from self-driving cars and things like that, and look at it and say, okay, this is a great new technology. How can we apply it to the world of communications and really build a better experience, if you will, for the end user? And, that's exactly to your point. You kind of look at something where either you can't do it today, or you can do it, but it's really clunky, right? And you look at, can we take one of these new technologies, in that case, machine learning, along with, the skill of sort of thinking about how a meeting operates, and tie those together to make something that we haven't had in the industry before. So a few years ago, we kind of incubated that in the CTO office, and these days it's a shipping product and a key part of, what makes Poly's stuff really, different and better. So,
and I don't want to minimize that effort when you bring it up, as long as you're using that one as an example, because the hundreds of instructions that the intelligence in that system needs to know in order to be able to frame a shot as somebody moves. We've obviously done articles about the rule of thirds and things like that, but somebody had to write all of those to begin with. Take what's obvious to the eye and write a set of rules that a machine can follow.
Yeah, and that's one of the key things too. Even though it's the office of the chief technology officer, we have a lot of folks who work on the team or work closely with us, where a lot of it is about experience, and it's about almost art, right? About understanding what the customers want to do, and to your point, translate from something that is very sort of experiential, right? Like, this is the way that we as users want to see that, and translate that into something that we can put on the device and put out there in the room, right? And that aspect of it, I think that's actually one of the things that is really unique to a company like Poly, where we've got folks like that who are experience oriented and more artistic, and they've been thinking about that experience in the conference room for, in some cases, decades, right? And so it's really exciting that finally, in some ways, the technology has caught up to enable us to really get those experiences that we've always kind of known that would be the holy grail, right? And the technology is finally getting to the point where we're able to get a lot closer. It's really good.
Right. So without revealing any NDA secrets that our icky and inferior competitors who watch the show for information would be dying to get a hold of, can you give us a sense of some of the technologies that your office is working on right now? Maybe more than one of them. Not so much in terms of features, because we don't announce features here, but just in general. I mean, you use self-driving cars as a great example. The thing that finds the lane is now being used to find somebody's shot, which is awesome. What other kind of things are you looking at and playing with?
Yeah, and I will say that that's one that continues to be a really big one, right? It's almost a never-ending one when it comes to machine learning. That there's newer techniques, there's newer ways to do things. If you look out there, if you look at the newer technologies, for example, in machine learning, there's things now like generative networks that are writing songs and doing things like that. And we're excited to see how that might apply, right? There's huge areas too that are completely different that we're looking at. Great thing, for example, around better improvements with using those kind of algorithms for audio. That's another product that actually has made it out into the production world, the noise block AI. But there are lots of really exciting technologies around using machine learning for audio that we're exploring and continue to want to look at. Lots of stuff too around how we're going to collaborate in very different office environments, right? We're finding that as people return to work, they're not returning to work to sit in their cube and work on their expense report. And I know you've talked about some of this on some of the other episodes. They're going back to collaborate, right? They want to be able to get in there and use the rooms and the spaces in ways that really engage the far side. So looking at, how do we do those kind of things in different spaces involves new audio techniques, more advanced cameras and fancy things. And even things like looking at how the metaverse and AR and VR is going to play into all of that, right? So there's a lot of new technologies that we're just sort of scratching the surface on. And in the same way we were talking earlier, figuring out how to take all of that knowledge of what we know our customers want in the meeting rooms and apply that new tech to it.
It's a really interesting phenomenon that's going on right now. And I give these presentations and I speak to clients about it all the time, and I've spoken about it on the show, probably ad infinitum. But the technology that's coming into offices and conference rooms and people's work from home locations is not only a million times better than what existed even 3 years ago, but it's less expensive. So you have more features, more capabilities for less money, easier to install and drop in. And then the big one, the big thing, which I'm sure makes your office's job much easier, is that these things are generally agile. We're sending out updates to them that are improving the camera shot and improving the audio and improving the way it works, partially from the developments in your office and partially from the developments in your office as brought into us by customers using the products. I know one example of that, and I don't know if this was your office, but certainly it was something that Polly did, was that we were with the tracking camera sometimes had an issue with reflections. So the first generation that came out wouldn't necessarily know the difference between somebody in the room and a reflection of somebody in the room, and that was updated in the field. And that must give you guys an amazing palette to be able to continually improve things as we go forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's been one of the things that all along, because we're a little bit detached from kind of day-to-day execution, we have an opportunity to show new technologies to our customers. But the valuable part is not just how they react to that, but the stories that we get back from them. Because to your point, The best way to find an interesting pain point, right, which is going to be a good product, is to be able to ask and understand, hey, what is it that's really causing you the most problems today? And often, to your point, it can be really small or really subtle things like a reflection, right? So no, it's very useful. And you hit on something too there that I think is really critical, that ability to update devices, right? We're moving towards very software focused kind of devices where it's not something where you get it in the field and that's it. I like to use the analogy that, Tesla is kind of the model of this. The car just keeps getting better because of software updates. And we're working really hard at Poly to do that with our products as well, right? We're adding new intelligence, we're adding new features, and we're making sure that the hardware, when it goes out the door, it's ready to do that and it's ready to grow and get better. So yeah, we're very proud of the fact that the same box 2 years later, it's almost like a different product, right? We've put so many more capabilities as the technology evolves. And it's a lot of fun for us to be able to see that actually hit the field. So,
and I assume it also helps that many of our similar products are written on the same platform. So, any of the Studio X products or our G7500 are written on the same platform. We have the same situation with headsets, with cameras, with our management software, that when you've developed this complex algorithm or new feature or new capability, that it's not impossible, it's not easy, but it's probable that you can push it to multiple products as you move forward.
yeah. And again, that's one of the things that I think is really unique about Poly too, because depending on what the new technology is, I mean, if it's something that's video related, then maybe this doesn't apply. But for audio, for example, we've got a huge portfolio where we can apply this technology. Everything from a headset through phones and speaker phones, all the way up to very large video conference solutions for large rooms, right? And so, there is a lot that goes on under the hood, not just in my group. In fact, most of this is the more mainline engineering group, but to platform things so that, to your point, we're able to very quickly leverage new ideas across that whole portfolio. And that is one of the areas where I think Poly is a lot more fun in some ways to be the CTO than in some other places, because we really do get to apply it across that whole product mix. And it's fun. It gives us some challenges too to, running things on smaller devices or figuring out how that new headset idea, how would it apply to a video conference, right? It's an exciting problem to have. So we really enjoy that aspect.
And I often brag about the P15 camera that I'm using here as being the best camera for home that's ever been invented, and that's true. But it's a perfect example of your point, where our larger cameras now have features that we call in a bundle under Director AI, which has a lot of these framing things that we talked about. And obviously, the higher end cameras are now doing multiple types, people focus, people framing, group framing. But if I turn the automatic framing on this P15 camera, this X couple $100 camera for the home, I can get up and walk around in my very messy shop, and it'll do the same essentially job, just built into a USB camera, because we've got the technology and we've built it in such a way that it goes forward, which is it's something to really be proud of.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of that, to your point, comes from, again, thinking about the experience, right? There are a lot of cases where things that maybe we originally did in a larger room just because we had a bigger, fancier system to go solve it. But we realize, hey, that's a feature that people at home, would really want as well. You want to look your best. You want to have the system fall into the background and just not think about it, regardless of the size of room you're in, right? That's what you want when you're in a big room presenting and sweating before, the board or your investors or whoever it might be. But you want that same experience at home, right? And, sometimes not everything can make it down. There may be capabilities in the hardware in a really big space that don't translate, but wherever possible, we really do want to bring that rich experience across the portfolio. Yeah.
So one story from my background, people know that I work for Poly, and before that I worked in end user firms, and I was a member. You can kind of see over right past the coronavirus, the Polycom
Yeah.
Customer Council that I was I was also an original member of the Plantronics UC Advisory Board. I remember it was one of those, I think it was the Plantronics one, where someone came out with a prototype drawing and a little device of a headset that had a built-in camera on it. And they were really fleshing out from end users, is this, where would you use this? How would you use this? What would the application be? And ultimately that didn't get turned into a product. But I mean, it raises the question of where do your ideas come from? And what percentage of them actually, turn out? And there's nothing wrong with failing fast. We've learned that. So what percentage fail fast versus actually eventually get into products?
Yeah, no, and I will agree with you on the fail fast one. When I was off playing professor, I taught entrepreneurship quite a bit, and it's one of those things where if you can leverage that, doesn't matter the size of an organization or anything, build things, get them in front of people, and find out, hey, do you like this? Do you hate it? Is it almost there, but we need to make a tweak? So there's a lot of that we do. And I think that, so kind of getting to the first question about where the ideas come from, it's a very cyclic process, right? We'll look at a new technology and maybe we'll have a wild guess of this is a way that we think we can apply it to really kind of have something that's differentiated. But we immediately want to get it out in front of, well-protected, close customers, if you will, right? And get their reaction, because to your point, I think the number that fail that we kind of prototype is probably north of 3/4, right? Where something isn't exactly right out of it, but we get great feedback from them because we put them in front of the customer. We spend 5 minutes explaining what we thought about, and then if we do it right, we spend the remaining 55 minutes listening to them tell us what's dumb or what's good, or even, hey, that caused me to think of something else, right? And we get that great idea from them. So yeah, I think, I'd like to say a ton of them come from our team directly, and sure, some do, but a lot of it is, we show stuff in that exactly fail fast way to customers, to people internally, to partners. And it's this very collaborative effort that really gives us, in my opinion, the best ideas, the ones that really turn out to be, product defining new things. So.
And I've been to the Austin facility a few times. You have a showroom there, and you have some capabilities there to bring customers and bring partners through there and show things. Tell us about it just for a second.
Yeah, I always sort of tease that I have a permanent trade show. So I've basically got a room that we rotate demos all the time, right? So there's something new usually out of my team almost monthly that will make it into that room. And to your point, whether it's customers or partners or an advisory council, we love to get them in there. We love to show them what we've been working on. And it gives us a chance, both by building them for real and showing them to customers. It pushes us to make sure they're really kind of well thought through, right? I mean, to actually get it built and working, you do have to put a little bit into it. And then that way, I think it's a lot easier. I know I keep coming back to this, but to get that feedback, because if I just tell you about an idea, it's one thing. But if I can kind of show it, we get better feedback. And I think it kind of jiggles things inside of people's brains a little bit. And then sometimes we get, even really great or really exciting ideas about how we might change that or tweak it or use it in a completely different way. So I think that's very valuable to be able to have that, trade show, if you will, trade show of the future, because it's all stuff that's not quite real yet. But
And
yeah.
to the extent that COVID is finally waning, I hope, or we're getting new boosters real soon.
Knock on wood.
Knock on. We talk about trade show. I'm assuming you and your team definitely get out there, sometimes to actually present in public, but many times just to kind of walk around and see what's going on in the space and learn about technology. I assume that's something you do.
It is, yeah, and I that's another one where obviously we like to come up with ideas, but lots of other people who are not us have great ideas as well. So it was slowed down. That's one of the things with the pandemic, but we are getting back out there, whether it's trade shows to see what other people in similar industries are doing, because a lot of the time we can look at something and say, hey, that's a great idea from movie production, but how would we pull that into video conferencing? Or this is a great new technology on the gaming side. What would we do with that in some of what we do? And also academic conferences as well, right? A lot of my team will go to some of the conferences on, let's say, next gen machine learning or whatever, to really see what those innovations are. We have a lot of people who came from an academic background. They're much more focused on real product today, but they're able to go there and kind of see what's really new and exciting, and then bring it back for us to kind of play with and try to work into the next gen of products.
Okay, so hopefully I will see you out in front of some of our customers at more of our customer meetings. I cannot confirm or deny the existence of a Poly Customer Council at this point, but hopefully we'll see you at some of those and at some of the trade shows. I'm looking forward to CES. I was at the last CES that had it was only 40,000 people, and that's small for CES. It's big for other trade shows, but
Yeah.
it was small. So hopefully that's where I see a lot of the 18 to 20 month look ahead in terms of technology innovation, and hopefully I'll catch you and some of your team there as well as that January timeframe comes around. So I normally, this is the part of the show where I'll ask people how to get in touch with you and find out more. I guess I'll still ask you that question, but it's another question is, how can somebody get feedback or ideas into you? Are you interested in that directly, or is there a process they can follow? I actually do know that we're close to announcing some new capabilities and features around our management platform, and stay tuned. We'll have some things to talk about how there can be some direct feedback loops around that. But other than that, if somebody's got a brilliant idea or a nice startup product and they want to talk to you about it, what would they do? What would the process be?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, some things we do get through the more explicit feedback channels, right? I mean, even things like bug reports and stuff like that, right? Or through, sales reps or people that they work with. But I'm always open to having people just, reach out as well, right? It's always easy. You can always guess at people's email addresses. They're always first and last name, right? So yeah, send me a note. I'm always happy to talk to people. We do love, hearing what's floating around. Yeah. So,
David, thank you very much.
And there's LinkedIn and all that too, right? There's all
Yes.
kinds of other mechanisms. So, but
Yes.
yeah,
If you're not connected with us on LinkedIn, you're making a big
you
mistake.
should be.
Network,
Yeah.
reach out to David and myself and keep the dialogue going. You should be joining some of the public groups like the IMCCA Collaboration Professionals and seeing us at trade shows and staying in touch with us. There's no customer or client that I don't like speaking with. And one of the things that I live with, and David, I'm sure you do as well, is knowledge of a problem is ownership. Even if it's not something I do, we're going to get you to the right people and we're going to help solve the problem. So by all means. David,
Exactly.
thank you very
And
much.
it's always that way, right? You're constantly just trying to, you may not be the right one, but if you get it, you hear about it, we do know about the folks inside who might be the right folks. Yeah. So Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was just thanking you for being here. I'm sort of wrapping things up today. And if anybody does want to reach out to you, we've talked about it, your email, your LinkedIn, people feel free to reach out to either one of us. So thanks very much for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of a little bit of housekeeping, that's it for this week. Our next week's show is it's a Labor Day holiday. It's a bank holiday in the U.S. But to prove that we're not American U.S. bigots and just doing things, my guest is going to be Paul Clark, who runs all of EMEA for Poly, and we'll have a great conversation about what he's seeing in the EMEA markets in some of those countries. Please join us for that. And we'll also have some of the winners. I'll get some video of the people who built the models. This is like one of the P15s that got built. I don't know if you have any of these, David, but these are actually harder to build than our actual products.
I am a huge,
really cool.
huge Lego fan, but sadly I didn't get any of those. They look so awesome.
That's our Sync 20. So we'll have a lot of them going forward. So that's it for this week. Thank you very much for joining. I'm your host, David Danto. For everybody at Poly, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.